Once you have your project pages done, you'll have a website that probably looks something like this, with an About Me section on your homepage and your Work section down here below. But if we go and look at the published version of our site, I can use the buttons up here to change pages, but I can't click yet on any of these images to actually go to those project pages. So let's make our website more interconnected. We'll go back to the editor. And if we select one of these images, we can then add a link. There's a button over here called link. If I add a link, I can choose to go to any page I want. For example, in this case, I want this image to go to project 1. That looks good. We'll hit done. I might also want this text to go there too, so you can click on the text. Done. Now I'm going to go and add links to each of these things individually. Okay, with that done, we should now be able to publish and then see the changes on our live site. I'll refresh here, make it actually update. Didn't update. Let's try again. There we go. Now you'll see that there's the line showing that this is a link. And if I click on any of these, it goes to that project page. Very good. Now, something else that I notice is that this menu is a little bit big. So we're going to look at editing and adjusting our menus. If I go back to the editor, I can now go to Pages and Menu here, and I could rearrange things. For example, I could take something like Project 1 here, and I could place it under Home. You see how that line pops up? If you put it in the right spot, there we go. And now, to get to it, I would have to put my mouse over the Home button and then click on Project 1. I don't think that's what I want, because I think I want the Home button to be separate from the other project options. But for example, I could go down here to add menu item, and I could add a drop down. And that drop down I could name something like projects. Then I could put these projects in that drop down like this, one after each other. And you'll notice now that they've disappeared from here and there's just the projects button. If I leave that as is and I publish, we can take a look at what that looks like. Let's refresh the page again until it updates. There we go. Now if I put my mouse over projects, you see that the options project 1 and project 2 pop up underneath. So let me put the other ones in here, and then we can see what that looks like. Okay, now if I hit publish, we wait for that to publish, and then we go view the site again. You'll see I have a home button and I have a projects button. And that projects button shows all of the different options underneath. There's some other settings and things we could change there, but that's a good start, I think. From here, you should have most parts of your website done. You have a home page, you have each of your project pages. If I go back to my home page here, I have the 2 sections. Consider what you might add to your footer if you want to have a copyright information, or if you want to say something else that shows up at the bottom of each of your pages, that's fine. When your project is finished and you like the way it looks, if you have extra time, you can add little decorative elements to the sides of your website, and make sure that you turn in Google Classroom this link. So when you go to the live version of your website, you should find this link and copy it. You can right-click, copy, and then in Google Classroom, you'll paste that into the assignment that says website link and turn it into me. That way I can see your website. After this point, anytime you edit your website, you need to make sure that you publish it at the end so that all of your changes are on the live version of your site and I can see them. There's some more things that you can mess around with. For example, this here, site design, lets you control quite a few other things here. You could change how the pages transition, whether they fade out and fade in. They could swipe. So if I change this to horizontal, it'll do something like that to go between pages, or vertical. Crossfade, out, in. Different transitions, which you could experiment with. There's some other options here too for things like apps that allow you to do specialized things. For the most part, you're not going to need any of these, but you're welcome to look to see if there's anything that's interesting to you. Just remember that some of them aren't free. Some of them cost money. So we want to make sure that we're only using free apps. The other options here, you're not really going to use either. You don't have a business, and you can manage your media just by uploading images yourself. Let's take a look at some of the other options we have editing elements and sections of our website. So for example, if I click on the text here, we have the edit text button, which we looked at, that has our fonts, our font sizes, the basic text controls, text color, backgrounds, but it also has some effects which we haven't looked at. So for example, I could make my text have a little shadow behind it, or give it an extra border line. There's also some other options here for line spacing. So if I had several lines of text, I could make it space a little differently, or I could set there to be more space between each letter in the word project one here. There's also an option here called animation and effects. Animation and effects lets us choose how that element will appear or move while it's on the screen. So for example, I could have it fade in or shutter in. I can make it turn to appear. Once it's appeared, I could then have it do a different animation. So if I go to loop, I could have it breathe, where it goes up and down while it's on the screen, or rubber back and forth. There are lots of different animations here, which you can mess around with and examine yourself. On an image, you have even more options. There's an option here to change image, which is what we will do when we get to the point where we need to replace these images with the actual images for our project. There are some other buttons here too. For example, if I click on settings, there's some basic settings about links and other things here. There's also design options. Design options would let me choose, for example, a frame to put that image in. There's a few pre-made ones here. There's some more options here, but if you click Customize Design, there are lots of options you can see. For example, I could choose a frame that makes it a circle, or that makes it look like it's taped onto the wall, or it's held up by pins. And each of these has some controls which I could adjust myself. For example, I could add some space here. If I make this like 20 pixels, now the corners are curved in. If I make this like a curve of 50 pixels, you'll see there's an even bigger curve. So there are lots of options here, which you can experiment with on your own. As you edit these things, you may also want to edit your sections. Right now this looks very bland. It's just white. You'll notice that when I click on the section, there's a button that pops up that says Change Background. There's quite a few other buttons here too, which you can explore, like animating entire sections. But we want to look at Change Background. This will let you add an image to the background of just this one section, like that. If I add an image, like for example, the citrus fruits here, I could then go up to Settings and change some options. So I could make the image only show 50%, say. Or if I did that, I could then add a color behind that image so that it looks a little different, like a blue color here. And now the background is part blue and part that image. In this case, I don't think I want that. I could also choose how that image shows up by changing these options. Right now, it's going to make it as big as is needed to fill that section, but I could also have it set, for example, to tile or to something else, which would maybe look a little different. Hopefully, this has shown you some of the options for how to change sections, whether it's a color, an image, or a video. I'm going to go back to no background for now. All right, with that, you should be able to completely design your website the way that you want it to be. And as long as it has these basic requirements, an About Me section, a section to show your projects, and then each of your project pages shows an example of that project and these 4 sections, then you have successfully built your website. Take the rest of the time today to work on designing extra parts, add images on the sides, whatever you would like, change colors, really make it your website, and then publish and turn in the link to me. I can't wait to see how your websites turn out.